The shadows of the old library were thick with secrets, as if the very walls breathed them. Marcus stood motionless, his fingers brushing over a dusty yellowed book, his eyes, narrowed with determination, fixed on the worn cover. Every muscle in his body screamed for answers. He could feel it. The truth was within his reach, hidden in the ancient text he was now holding. The air smelled of musty paper and ink, the faintest echo of a ticking clock somewhere in the distant hall. A whisper of wind stirred the curtains, casting an eerie glow from the single lamp overhead. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. But who? His heart raced, not from fear, but from the unshakable knowledge that what he was about to uncover could destroy everything. He had been tracking the society's movements for months, piecing together fragments of lost history. But now, it was more than just a shadow. It was real. He opened the book. The brittle pages creaked under his touch, revealing cryptic symbols and a map that hinted at something much larger, a hidden society that had controlled everything, from politics to the very air they breathed. Could this really be the key? Or had he just made a grave mistake? Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway, quickening his pulse. He slammed the book shut, heart thumping wildly. Was it the keeper of secrets? Or was someone else after what he had found? Marcus couldn't believe his eyes. The symbols were not just ancient, they were dangerous. The map, though incomplete, pointed to a hidden society that had manipulated events for centuries. His heart raced as he traced the lines, each one a step closer to understanding the impossible. But with every new piece of information, the fear grew. What if uncovering the truth meant risking everything he had built? The voice of reason echoed in his head. "It's too risky," it warned. But Marcus silenced it. This wasn't just about solving a mystery anymore. It was personal. The stakes had changed. The book, the map, the whispers. Everything felt like it had been leading to this moment. He had to find out what was buried beneath the surface. He turned the page, revealing an encrypted message that made his stomach drop. Someone had been watching him. Someone knew what he was searching for, and they were closing in. His hand trembled, but his resolve hardened. No turning back now. The footsteps grew louder, and Marcus stiffened, instinctively reaching for the drawer in his desk. He pulled out a penknife, the only weapon within reach, but his mind raced faster than his body. There was no time to think. Whoever was coming would have answers, but would they help him or make everything worse? The door creaked open, and Marcus's heart skipped a beat. It was the keeper of secrets, the one person who could destroy everything he was working for. The man's cold, calculating gaze met his, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft rustle of pages. "What are you looking for, Marcus?" The keeper's voice was smooth, almost pleasant, but Marcus knew better. The game was about to get deadly. The keeper of secrets stepped into the room, his dark suit almost blending into the shadows. His cold eyes scanned the room, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've been digging too deep, Marcus," he said softly. "But you already knew that, didn't you?" Marcus stood, the penknife still in his hand, but he knew it wouldn't help him now. The keeper wasn't here to fight. He was here to stop him, to make sure the truth remained hidden. Marcus had suspected as much, but hearing the words spoken aloud sent a chill down his spine. The keeper moved closer, the faint scent of cologne lingering in the air. "You'll regret this," he warned, his tone dark and final. The keeper's words hung in the air as the door clicked shut behind him. Marcus felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had come so far. Was he willing to let everything slip away because of one man's threats? He looked at the book again, at the map that held the key to everything he had been searching for. But now, it wasn't just about knowledge. It was about survival, and he wasn't sure he was ready for what that might mean. Marcus barely had time to react. A loud crash echoed from the hall, and the door burst open. He spun around just in time to see a shadow dart across the threshold. His breath caught in his chest. The Keeper of Secrets wasn't alone. Panic surged, flooding his veins. The book, the map, it was all he had now. But what good was it if he couldn't get out of the library in one piece? He could hear their footsteps growing louder, heavier. They were coming for him. Marcus grabbed the book, shoving it into his jacket. His heart raced, and his pulse hammered in his temples. His mind screamed for a way out. Through the back door? The window? There was no time to think. Just act. Run, he muttered to himself. But the voice in his head, his own voice, didn't sound confident. He moved quickly, but every step felt like he was sinking deeper into the trap. The faint sound of whispers and footsteps echoed all around him. He could hear them, but he couldn't see them. Not yet. The tension in the air was thick, and it felt like the walls were closing in. He had no idea who was chasing him, but he couldn't stay. Not after everything he had uncovered. Marcus stumbled into the narrow alley behind the library, his breathing harsh and uneven. The rain had started, cold and unforgiving, but it felt like a small relief compared to the suffocating tension inside. His clothes clung to his body, but his mind was still racing. He couldn't escape this feeling. He wasn't safe. Not yet. He leaned against the brick wall, trying to steady his breath. He had evaded them for now. But what did it mean if the Keeper was really after him? Was this just the beginning? Behind him, he could hear the distant sounds of carriages rolling down wet cobblestones. The world felt miles away, and Marcus was alone with his thoughts. A flash of the map from the book reappeared in his mind. The map led to something far more dangerous than he realized. But who else knew about it? A sudden rustle behind him snapped him out of his thoughts. He quickly turned, but there was no one there. It was just the wind. Or was it? A voice echoed faintly from somewhere in the distance. Something had changed. But what? Are you sure you want to continue this, Marcus? The voice was unmistakable, cold, and smooth. The Keeper of Secrets. But this time, it wasn't just a whisper. It was clear, direct, and a threat that lingered in the wet night air. Marcus froze. The Keeper wasn't just close. He was right behind him. The night was alive with movement, but all Marcus could hear was the echo of those words. He turned slowly, his breath caught in his throat. The Keeper stepped into the light, his face almost serene, but the danger in his eyes was unmistakable. You can't run forever. You've already seen too much. Now, you must choose. You can either walk away and forget what you know, or you can be silenced. Marcus's heart pounded. The Keeper's words were laced with power, but there was something else. Fear. The Keeper feared him, or at least the truth Marcus had uncovered. The smile on his face only deepened the sense of dread. Just as Marcus began to back away, another voice cut through the night. Enough, Marcus. Marcus turned to find a figure stepping out of the shadows, a man he hadn't expected. This wasn't the Keeper, and it certainly wasn't the enemy he feared. It was someone who had been following him all along, someone who knew far more than they had ever let on. You don't have to do this alone, the figure said, his voice calm but urgent. I've seen what you've uncovered, and it's bigger than either of us. But it's not too late to turn back. For a brief moment, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. This man, his mentor, had always been a guiding figure. But even as he looked at him, a sinking feeling settled in his stomach. The choice was never as simple as it seemed. Trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. Not now. Marcus took a deep breath. He had no more time for second guessing. The truth was out there, hidden in plain sight, and it would not wait for him to catch his breath. His hands were shaking, but his mind was sharp. The map, the symbols, the society. The stakes had only gotten higher. But no matter how much fear gnawed at his insides, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't stop now. The figures around him were becoming clearer. They were part of the game, but Marcus was done being a pawn. It was time to take the next step, no matter the cost. He turned toward the darkened path ahead. As he stepped into the night, the rain began to fall harder, the world around him growing darker and more uncertain. But Marcus was certain of one thing. He would expose the truth, even if it cost him everything. The rain poured heavily against the window, the soft patter a stark contrast to the tension in the air. Marcus sat at a small table, the map spread out before him. His hand trembled slightly as he traced the route marked on the paper. It should have been clear by now, but something was off. The creak of a floorboard snapped him back to reality. The door opened quietly, but he wasn't alone. "Did you find it?" The voice was familiar, but it had a cold edge to it, one Marcus hadn't heard before. His eyes flickered up, meeting the gaze of the stranger who had been shadowing him for weeks. "You're not alone in this," the stranger continued, stepping closer. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of something Marcus couldn't place. Was it sympathy or something darker? The silence between them grew uncomfortable. Marcus tried to ignore the unease crawling up his spine. Was this man trustworthy? A small smile played at the stranger's lips, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The air in the small room felt thick, almost suffocating as Marcus and the stranger exchanged glances. For a moment, everything was quiet, too quiet. Then, the stranger leaned in closer, his voice softer, but with an undertone of authority. "I know what you're looking for, but you have to trust me." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He wanted to believe him, he really did, but the weight of everything he'd learned had made him wary. There was no room for mistakes anymore, no room for trust. The stranger placed a hand on Marcus's arm, his grip firm. "I'm not here to betray you. I'm here to help." For a moment, Marcus allowed himself to believe that. But then a small gesture, the way the stranger's eyes darted to the door, the slight twitch of his fingers, set off alarms in his mind. What was he hiding? "I'm not the only one who knows," the stranger said, leaning back, his eyes narrowing. "There are others, people you can't trust, but you don't have a choice. You're already too deep." Marcus' heart skipped a beat. The words hit him harder than he expected. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The stranger gave a small, knowing smile. "You know who. The keeper of secrets, for one. But there's more. There's always more." For a moment, Marcus considered his options. The stranger's words were dangerous, yet they made sense. Everything he had uncovered had led to this. But how much of it was the truth? How much was just another manipulation? "I can help you," the stranger repeated, his voice low and urgent. But Marcus felt the walls closing in. This wasn't just about a mystery anymore. It was about survival. The sudden sound of footsteps outside shattered the moment of stillness. Marcus didn't have time to react before the door burst open, and the keeper of secrets stepped inside. "I warned you, Marcus." His voice was cold, his eyes gleaming with a dark amusement. The stranger's expression shifted immediately. "You?" he asked, his voice betraying surprise. But Marcus barely registered the exchange. His eyes were fixed on the keeper, his heart hammering in his chest. It was happening. Everything he feared, everything he suspected, it was all falling into place. The keeper's gaze locked with Marcus. "You didn't think I would let you get away, did you?" Marcus barely had time to draw in a breath before the stranger's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. "We need to leave." "Now," the stranger hissed. But it was too late. The trap had already closed. Marcus couldn't believe it. The betrayal, the lies. It hit him like a physical blow. His mind raced, but all he could feel was the sharp sting of the stranger's deception. "You were never going to help me, were you?" Marcus spat, his voice laced with disbelief. "You were just another part of the game." The stranger didn't answer, but his eyes softened for a moment, regret flickering there. But Marcus couldn't afford to feel sorry for him. Not anymore. The truth was staring him in the face, and it was ugly. As the stranger stepped back, his face masked in regret, Marcus turned toward the door. He had to get out, had to think. There was no turning back. No more hesitation. He couldn't trust anyone, but he could trust himself. And he was done being a pawn. The silence was deafening after the storm of emotions that had swept through Marcus. He sat in the dimly lit room, the faint light of the setting sun barely filtering through the curtains. The map still lay before him, the weight of it pressing down like a silent accusation. Everything had changed. The betrayal, the chase, it all felt like a dream now. Yet the reality of it hit him with every breath. He had been played, manipulated by people he thought he could trust. The truth was slipping through his fingers like sand, leaving only the fragments of what once seemed so certain. Marcus's hand hovered over the map, tracing the edges of the route that had led him here. There was something in the way the lines met, a pattern he hadn't seen before. A hidden truth was buried deep in these symbols. But what was it? And why had he been brought here? As he sat in the stillness, a faint noise broke his thoughts. A whisper of movement from the hallway. Someone was coming. But Marcus wasn't ready for what he was about to face. The flashback hit Marcus like a tidal wave, flooding him with memories of days gone by. He remembered the first time he had met the stranger. The man who had promised to help him uncover the secrets of the society. At the time, the words had seemed so reassuring. But now, everything was clear. He remembered the first clue, the first map. It had all seemed like a puzzle, a mystery waiting to be solved. But he had never questioned who was setting the pieces in front of him. "Trust me," the stranger had said, his voice calm and steady. But now, Marcus could hear the lie beneath it. He could see it in the way the man had watched him, as if he were nothing more than a tool to be used. The memories twisted into a painful knot in his stomach. The answers were out there, but the cost of finding them was more than Marcus could bear. What was the truth if it meant losing everything? "Why didn't you tell me?" Marcus' voice was hoarse, a mix of disbelief and anger. He stood in the doorway facing the stranger. The man's calm expression didn't falter, but the tension in the room was palpable. "You knew too much already," the stranger replied, his voice low, almost sympathetic. "If I told you, you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't have understood." Marcus took a step forward, his fists clenched. "Then explain it to me now. Tell me why all of this, why me, matters." The stranger paused, his eyes narrowing. "Because you were meant to be part of something bigger. You were always meant to be the key. But you're not the only one with a role to play." Marcus's breath caught. This wasn't just about the society anymore. This was about him, his destiny, and the realization that everything he thought he knew was a lie. The stranger's words struck like a lightning bolt. "You weren't supposed to find out this way," he said softly, his voice laced with regret. "But now that you have, you need to understand the truth. The society wasn't just controlling the world. We were saving it." Marcus's mind reeled. Saving it? By lying? By manipulating everyone? His voice cracked with disbelief. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as the weight of the truth crushed him. The stranger's expression remained unchanged, almost detached. "The truth was never meant for you, Marcus. You were never meant to know. But now, it's too late." The silence between them grew thick. Marcus couldn't process it. This wasn't the enemy he had been expecting. This wasn't a villain. It was someone who believed their actions were justified. The real enemy was something Marcus hadn't been prepared for. The system that controlled everything. Marcus stood in silence, the weight of the stranger's words settling heavily on him. So, this was the truth all along, he muttered to himself, his voice barely audible. He had believed he was uncovering secrets, discovering the world's hidden truths. But the truth was darker than he had imagined. He had been part of a plan, a system, a machine he couldn't escape from. He wasn't a hero, he was a tool. The revelation hit him like a tidal wave, but beneath the shock, something else stirred. A quiet determination. He had come too far. He had no choice but to keep moving forward, even if it meant accepting that everything he had believed was a lie. So now what? Marcus whispered, his gaze fixed on the stranger. He was ready, not for the fight, but for the truth. Whatever came next, he would face it head on. The air was thick with anticipation, every breath feeling like it could shatter the silence. Marcus stood in the center of the abandoned warehouse, his heart racing. He could hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing down the long hallway. The time for hiding was over. His hands clenched into fists, the weight of the truth pushing down on him. The book, the society, the lies, all of it had led him to this moment. And now, standing on the precipice, there was no turning back. His mind flashed through memories, the betrayals, the secrets, all of it leading here. The footsteps grew louder. A shadow moved at the far end of the hallway, coming toward him. Marcus didn't flinch. The truth was out. But who would walk away from this alive? "I know what you're thinking," came the voice, low and dangerous, the keeper of secrets stepping into view. "But it's too late, Marcus. You can't win this." The keeper of secrets, a figure cloaked in shadow, took a slow step forward. "You were always meant to be part of this, Marcus. But you were too eager, too impatient." Marcus stood his ground, eyes burning with rage. "You're the one who betrayed me? You knew all along and you used me like a pawn?" The keeper smirked, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "You still don't understand, do you? You think you can stop this? We've already won. Everything you've done, every step you've taken, it's all been part of the plan." Marcus's pulse quickened. He wanted to lash out, to strike back, but something inside told him to wait. There was something more. "Why?" he spat, his voice raw with emotion. "Why me? Why do this?" The keeper's face darkened. "Because you're the only one who could have found the truth. And now you'll be the one to end it." Marcus's heart was pounding in his chest, but he could feel it. He was at a breaking point. The weight of everything that had happened, the betrayals, the lies, was crashing down on him, and yet something in him refused to back down. The sound of a distant crash echoed in the warehouse, and Marcus turned just in time to see the figure of the stranger, the man who had once promised to help, appear from the darkness. His clothes were torn, his face smeared with dirt and blood. "You should have stayed out of this," Marcus said, his voice trembling with disbelief. The stranger's eyes were wide with fear. "I didn't have a choice. They'll kill me if I don't." His words were cut off as a gunshot rang out, striking him in the chest. The warehouse fell silent. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as the stranger crumpled to the ground. A surge of anger exploded within him. This wasn't just about the truth anymore. It was about revenge, about justice. The gunshot echoed through the empty warehouse, and Marcus didn't hesitate. He charged at the keeper of secrets, his fists clenched, his mind consumed by rage and betrayal. "You killed him," Marcus screamed, his voice raw with fury. The keeper of secrets didn't flinch. "He was weak," he said calmly, almost dismissively. "Just like you." In that moment, Marcus understood. This wasn't about just one man. It was about everything they had ever stood for. The society, the lies, the control. The fight was more than just physical. It was ideological. It was a battle for the very soul of the world. But Marcus didn't care. He wasn't fighting for the truth anymore. He was fighting for his survival. With a roar, Marcus tackled the keeper to the ground, the two of them struggling in a blur of motion. The struggle between them continued, a flurry of punches, kicks, and broken furniture. But as the fight wore on, Marcus's movements grew slower, more deliberate. He was done with running, with hiding. The truth had already been uncovered. This was his final stand. Finally, with a last, desperate effort, Marcus forced the keeper down, pinning him to the cold concrete floor. His chest heaved with exhaustion, the weight of everything crashing down on him. The truth was out, but the cost had been higher than he ever imagined. "I'm done," Marcus whispered, his voice cracked. "This ends now." As he stood, he looked around the warehouse. Everything felt different, as if the world had shifted. There was no going back. The world was forever changed, but so was he. The dust had settled, but the silence in the room was deafening. The light from the rising sun filtered through the cracked windows, casting long shadows on the ground. Marcus stood still, his chest rising and falling slowly, trying to breathe through the weight of the world that now lay heavy on his shoulders. Everything had changed. His mind raced through the events of the past days. Betrayal, pain, loss. And yet, the world outside was calm, almost indifferent to the chaos that had just erupted. Was it all worth it? The questions lingered, unanswered. He glanced at the book, the symbol of everything he had fought for. The truth was out, but so much had been lost. Was this the price of knowing too much? Marcus looked around the empty room, the remnants of the fight still scattered about. His hands trembled, but he knew this was the moment of reflection. Everything had led here, and now it was up to him to face what was left, what remained after all the destruction. Marcus's mind wandered through memories of the people he had lost along the way. The stranger, the ally who had become a casualty of a game too big to understand. He could still hear the faint echoes of their conversations, of promises made and broken. A soft wind brushed through the open window, carrying with it the smell of rain and earth. It was a reminder of the world outside, of life continuing despite everything that had happened. But inside, there was only stillness. Marcus had found the truth, but the cost was more than he had bargained for. The weight of it hung on him like a dark cloud, one that refused to dissipate. His thoughts were broken only by the soft sound of his own breathing, steady but heavy with the realization of what had been lost. "Why me?" he whispered. But the question wasn't for anyone else. It was for himself. Why had he been chosen to uncover these secrets? Why had it come at such a cost? Suddenly, a soft voice broke the silence. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Marcus turned slowly, his eyes meeting the figure standing at the door. It was the stranger, the one who had betrayed him. But now, he looked different, wounded, like a ghost of the man Marcus once knew. "I didn't think you'd survive," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. There was no anger left in him, only a weariness that felt like it might never fade. The stranger gave a faint smile, though it was laced with pain. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to protect you from the truth." Marcus' heart tightened. "What truth?" The stranger stepped forward, his movements slow. "That this wasn't just about you. It was about all of us. We were all part of it. There was no more hiding from the past, no more pretending. The truth had always been there, buried beneath layers of lies. Now they would have to face it together." The stranger's words echoed in Marcus's mind long after they were spoken. You were never meant to uncover it, but now that you have, there's no going back. Marcus turned away, his mind processing everything. The past, the people he had trusted, and the realization that they were all pawns in a game much bigger than they could have imagined. But there was something else now, something that had shifted in him. He understood the sacrifices that had been made, the price of uncovering the truth. And yet, he couldn't help but feel a small flicker of hope. "It doesn't matter now," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady. "We've come too far to stop now." The stranger nodded, a final wistful look passing between them. "Then go, do what you must." Marcus took a deep breath and walked toward the door. The past was gone, but the future was still open to him. He didn't know what was next, but he knew he had to keep moving forward. Marcus stepped outside, the cool air filling his lungs. The world had changed, and so had he. The chaos was behind him, but the scars of the past would remain. The truth was out, but now it was time to rebuild. His eyes scanned the horizon, a sense of calm washing over him. The pain of the past was still there, lingering beneath the surface, but he had learned to live with it. He had to. The journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. "So this is what it's all come to," Marcus murmured, a small, bittersweet smile forming on his lips. "Now I understand." With that, he took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. The world was waiting, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus felt ready. The world was still. The sounds of life outside, distant, faint, seemed far removed from Marcus. He stood at the edge of the old, broken city, watching as the first light of dawn broke through the fog. It was the end of everything he knew, and yet it felt like the beginning. He could still feel the weight of the past pressing down on him, the memories of loss and betrayal haunting his every step. The ruins of the battle lay behind him, but it was more than just physical destruction. Something had been broken in him too. The truth had been uncovered, but at what cost? Marcus turned his face towards the rising sun. There was peace in that moment, fragile, fleeting, but undeniable. What remained now was the silence. His world had shifted. The pieces of the puzzle had fallen into place, but the picture they revealed was one he wasn't sure he could ever fully understand. Was it worth it? The weight of the world seemed to lift from his shoulders as Marcus began to walk away from the wreckage. His footsteps were slow, deliberate. The ground beneath him was cracked, the remnants of a world that had collapsed in on itself. But he kept walking. Each step felt like a quiet act of defiance, a silent affirmation that life would continue, even if it wasn't the life he had once imagined. He had lost so much, but there was still something left to salvage. As he walked, the wind carried the faintest scent of rain, cleansing the air. The past was fading with each passing moment, but its marks remained. Marcus didn't need to look back. He had seen enough. Now it was time to leave it all behind and move forward. As Marcus continued his journey, a memory surfaced, soft, fleeting. The voice of the stranger echoed in his mind, a whisper of something long past. "You were never meant to uncover it all, Mark. But now that you have, you'll never be the same." The words felt like an echo in the wind. It was true. He wasn't the same. He had seen the darkness, the lies, and the destruction that lay beneath the surface of everything. But there was also a glimmer of light, of hope, however fragile. The stranger's voice faded as Marcus walked on, but the lesson remained. The truth was a heavy burden, but it was also the only thing worth carrying. He had learned that now, in ways he never expected. The world had begun to move again. The quiet rhythms of life had resumed. A bird called out in the distance. A car passed by. But for Marcus, everything felt different. The weight of the past hung in the air like a heavy fog, but it was lifting slowly. He passed a group of people, strangers, their faces blank, their lives continuing as if nothing had changed. But Marcus knew better. He had changed. He could never go back to the way things were. And yet, there was something liberating in that. The world didn't need to understand what had happened. They didn't need to know the truth. Marcus had carried it long enough. It was his burden to bear, and now it was time to let it go. Marcus paused at the edge of a bridge, the city skyline stretching before him. The world was quiet here, peaceful. He took a deep breath, letting the fresh air fill his lungs. It was over. The battle, the secrets, it was all behind him now. His hand rested on the cold railing, the steel smooth beneath his fingers. For a moment, he let the stillness wash over him. The world had changed, but so had he. He wasn't the same man who had first walked into this city. The truth had shaped him, broken him, but in the end, it had set him free. Truth must never be owned, he whispered to himself, the words carrying a weight that he couldn't shake. The world had its secrets, and now he understood them. But some things, some truths, were better left untold.